artists are the most appropriate people in our eyes to be able to speak about today and what's going on around us, and to respond to the beautiful environment around us. And this incredible panel of people have done the most beautiful projects here in Laguna Beach to call attention to Laguna, to our coastline, to the sea, to our land. And Art and Nature is just one of the most special projects that we do every year. This is our 10th year celebrating Art and Nature, and I know so many of you have joined us for those. It's really an honor to be able to mark this moment for the museum and for Art and Nature, and we're looking forward to a very robust 10 years ahead. So with no further ado, again, just thank you so much for being here. I want to introduce Rochelle Steiner, who is our Curatorial Fellow, and she's going to be leading the panel tonight with these wonderful art and nature artists. Welcome.
Thank you all so much for coming this evening. It is just amazing to see you all here, and I want to thank you all, panelists, for joining me. It has not been easy to get you all in one room, so this is really an honor to be able to sit with you all after many conversations, not only about scheduling, but most importantly about your work. I am not going to read all of their bios. Their bios are on our website because that would take up all of our time because they are so remarkable in their accomplishments. But I am going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do this evening. So each of them are going to have about 5 minutes, and I'm going to kindly keep to time to talk about their work, specifically their work here at the Laguna Art Museum as part of Art and Nature. And we have some images that you'll be able to look at, but also there are some works right here in this room by Berg, and in the next room, the exhibition by Rebecca Méndez. So we hope you will also interact with these artworks here in the present from this year. We're going to introduce one by one as we go in order from the earliest project, which was Lita's, to the present. And then after each of them have a moment to talk about their works, we're going to have a conversation. And we've talked about some topics that intersect and weave between all of them that have to do with not only the work, but most particularly the landscape, the environment, and place, which is very exciting. And at the end, we will welcome some questions from all of you. Just to start, Julie mentioned that this museum was founded by artists, which is very exciting to be here amongst artists. And at the turn of the 20th century, artists did come to Southern California, and particularly to Laguna Beach, to explore. They came to escape industrialization in the city, in Los Angeles and other developing areas. At that point, they also came for health. They came for optimism, and artists came here to paint and reflect on the beauty of this great place. And as a result, there was a development of an artist colony, and we still see the remnants of that today alive, well, and thriving. So I'm going to ask these artists to talk about what draws them to here. And I also just want to frame this for a moment by saying, you know, this is an incredible museum, but also on the cliff of an incredible public space. And the beach, in my view, is one of the greatest public spaces that we have, which is open to everyone. And so these artists have taken that as subject, as fodder, as exploration, and in many cases, as site. So with that, I turn it to Lita. And artists, you can see the images here because I know they are behind your heads. So hopefully I can get them to move forward. And if I can't, I will ask Paul for help. Paul, I already need help. While Paul is helping me, Lita's project was in 2004, so 14, so sorry, 2014. And there we go. And Lita made work not only in the building, but also outside the building. So over to Lita.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm really excited to be here. This museum is one of my little jewels in my heart. I've been coming here for quite a few decades, actually. And I'm very excited to be here tonight with my incredibly wonderful friends all around me. I want to start with a quote from Vincent Scully, who's an architectural historian. And he talks about that our relationship to the environment is the beginning of art. And as I drive here, and I come through Center Coast Drive, and then I arrive at this horizon and the blue sea and the sun, I just start almost screaming. I want to dance. It's extraordinary. I mean, you guys live in paradise. And I'm from Malibu, which is paradise as well, but this is a different kind of paradise. And so I do react to it. I react very, very much to it. And in 2014, when I was asked to do the art nature, I came up with two ideas, the one inside and the one outside. The one inside was called particle horizon. And particle horizon is a term from astronomy, which means it's the furthest that the eye can see, essentially. And in there, it was in the basement here, downstairs, and I had projections of the motion of the stars at the North Pole, the motion of the stars at the South Pole, and the motion of the stars at the equator. And then there was about 10 tons of salt, on which there was a pedestal on which lay a blue figure, who was the very first time that I started the story, the narrative of the 25th century female astronaut. And she's a character that I invented, who comes to this planet at different times in our history to remind us of our connection to the cosmic source and to the stars. So that was inside. I had an incredible score and a narration. I watch my time. And so the writing itself was very internal, and it was about how she crash landed and she remembered who she was and that she had a mission, but she saw things from a great distance, from a great perspective. So when I was asked to do nature and art as well, of course I chose the beach. At that time, the curator asked me if I could do anything, anywhere. So I went all over Laguna, but who wouldn't choose Main Beach? And what had always influenced me, of course, was that beautiful curvature. And I had just done a project that I know a couple of you have been in Los Angeles, where everyone had red suits. This time I asked everyone to wear white, and the idea was, it was called an elongated now, and the idea was to stand at sunrise and watch the sunrise at noon, watch the sun there at sunset, and then go into the museum to see particle horizon. My daughter, who portrays the character, is also a choreographer, and she said, "Are you kidding me? No one's gonna stand there all day long." So we decided to just do sunset, and so everyone volunteers, but they literally, and some of you are probably in it, literally stood there. At first they walked all the way the entire curvature of the beach, and then watched as the sun set, and then she came. The astronaut came in a red dress and pointed where they could start moving into the museum. And what's really special about it is that it is about a different perspective. When you can see it from the air, you can see that they formed a line, a white line, that the white water was another line, the highway was another line. So again, it's that question of perspective of light and space.
So thank you. This just runs for about a minute, so we'll just watch it for a moment to be able to take in the performance.
Yeah, they were each holding a little light, an LED light, and so when they came into the museum, they became part of the light of all of Laguna. It was really beautiful, and then they came and then watched the piece in here that had the rotation of the stars at all points on the planet.
I still have my new light.
Oh, really? That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
So I think it might be sticking, but I think I'm going to move forward to Laddie to get another view of the beach there. Let me see if I can. There we go. Thank you, Lita. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. So in 2015, just a year later, Laddie, you made this fantastic work. So while you talk, maybe I'll show some of these images.
Well, as a lot of you know, I've always been concerned with light conditions, but I've never had the opportunity to work with light conditions and water. And I knew that a laser beam could actually follow a line of surf. In other words, it was a dark green, and then the wave would break, and it'd be white water, which would illuminate the laser. So the laser just moved up and down the beach like that, just one line. And then I made I'm just telling you about the piece first. We had a lot of trouble with the BMA, I think it's the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, because of it being a public beach. So I couldn't lay things right down on the beach. So we found a precipice, which you've probably all been on. You know, it's the place with the kiosk, and use that as a point, and practiced. This took over a year to do out in the valley with this guy who was a laser expert, but his mentality was more like Nordstrom openings. So the process of making this piece was more of a reductive thing, you know, like I would say, no, take that out, take that out, take that out, take that out. I find that's one line, you know, he didn't get it. You know, so that was always difficult. And then with the grid, what I wanted to do was have people interact with it. They could go down on the beach, but the grid never touched the sand. It was about maybe 2 feet above it at the most, and maybe about like this, 8, 10 inches, or something like that. So it's this grid laid across the sand and only illuminated in the white sand. And then I moved the projector and the laser projector that's when it went into the ocean and then started to grid the waves as well. I got this idea to work with light when I was probably about 13 years old. My stepfather was a lens designer and a mathematician. So we grew up in a house that had laser beams running down the hall. And about every 5th item in the house you could not touch or look at. So it kind of stuck with me, and I went to Schnard Art Institute in the 60s and started painting, but at that point in my time, the painting was not made. I just had this light and stuff, so I've been working with light and just aspects of it. I've got a show in New York right now. It's up with the light pieces, and so it's been about 54 years of working with light. Nobody wanted it, except Nick Wilder. And so I, just did other things for money. And, good, not a Albuquerque. Yeah, so That's my story.
Well, with that story, I just have these few more pictures of people interacting with this and really enjoying this work on the beach. Not only the line, but also the color.
The line is the thing I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
Because it followed the surf line. So it became much brighter in the whitewater than it did before the waves started breaking.
Yeah. So thank you very much for talking about that. So Phil did an incredible piece in the sand, and I also brought a couple pictures of his work in the desert because Phil lives in the desert, but is inspired by many aspects of California. So.
Laddie, I all of a sudden want to live with lasers. To somehow make that part of my daily experience. Well, look, I've been coming to Laguna since I think I was 7 or 8 years old. It was always for my dad's birthday, summertime, and we would come to the Sawdust Festival and the Laguna Arts Festival. So when Malcolm Warner, the director at the time, asked me to be part of the 2016 Art and Nature, I was, of course, very, very honored, and he said, why don't you come out from the desert, we'd like to show you the site. And so I showed up at the museum, and no one had told me yet that the potential site was Main Beach. And so we sort of walked down the hill and walked out on the boardwalk, and right like the middle of the boardwalk, and you're looking at the, the beach line extending kind of infinitely to the north and south with a, horizon line in front of you, and he was sort of like, well, here it is. Here's your site. And I think it was this kind of intense moment of how do you possibly do something that can be in conversation, just in terms of scale, with that sense of the infinite in front of you. And I think some of my initial thoughts were that maybe I could do some kind of drawing in the sand that followed the natural curvature of the beach. And as I thought more about it, I thought, my God, the sunsets, the skies, the daily experience that is here is just so perfectly beautiful. Like, how can I ever make something that can compare to that? So I started thought maybe I could do some kind of reflective drawing. I still didn't know what that meant, but that was the direction that I was heading. And so I ended up creating a piece called Quarter Mile Arc. I was kind of adamant with the museum from the beginning that we do something that was physical and out there 24/7 over the course of 3 days. It's very much thanks to you guys, I think, warming up the city to the point where they were okay with doing this. And so there were 300 10-foot high, 4-inch by 4-inch mirror polished stainless steel reflectors that followed the true radius of the beach, of Main Beach. And they were located in a particular way, far enough away, I think it was 20 or 30 feet off of the potential high tide, going back in time and checking the high tide so that the water would never touch any of the poles, but all of them were running perpendicular to the earth. They were also turned at 45 degrees. So there was a sense that this line was made of Laguna. It was made of the ocean, it was made of the sky and the beach and the people that were visiting. I could say that it's mirror polished stainless steel, but ultimately it's made of the place. I think what was fascinating is that there was kind of 4.5 feet between all of these. There was this porosity to it that as you approached it, they were kind of simple uprights. As soon as you passed through that moment, there was the kind of oblique view in either direction where all of that reflection was condensed. And you had this perfect mirror image of the ocean and the sky. And this view we had perfect sunsets every single day and perfect dawn skies every day. I think it was like a day where there was an hour of fog. And so we found that people were kind of flocking to the site around sunset to essentially, felt like the artwork was like a tool for viewing the environment. The Coast Guards, I remember, told me this is the first time I've ever been on the beach where everybody has their back to the sunset. They were occupying the space, right? They were occupying the space between the sunset and the ocean and watching the sunset through the artwork. And for me, that was really important because it was a direct connection with that environment. And I think for some people, it was a sense that maybe through the artwork, they're sort of viewing that sunset, maybe truly for the first time. Of taking these individual samplings and placing them there as like objects of the sunset, I think was very powerful. I also love these kinds of temporary projects. You know, this was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday by noon, it was gone. And there were people showing up for sunset that day, and this sense like there was a myth, like it was a dream, like had this really happened? So I think it was as powerful placing it there as it was removing it. This is an image from, was the next iteration, let's say. This was a circle of land and sky, 165-foot diameter circle. This time they were canted out at 10 degrees so that as you approached the work, the only thing that was reflected was the land. And as you stepped inside of it, all that was reflected was the sky. But there's this incredible line drawing of light, shadow, reflection that would change as the sun moved from the east to the west.
So Kelly, I'm going to ask how he is next, actually, just because her work is less visible at the moment than yours, Rebecca, and I'll come to yours after. But Kelly, can you talk about this moment in time?
Yeah, so my project for Art and Nature was actually just this past November, and it was titled Pyramidion. And I was super excited to be a part of this. I had, seen so many of the amazing projects from years past, and I've been coming to Laguna ever since even before I moved to Los Angeles. So my first visit was in 2007, and been coming ever since, and the landscape has just been so inspiring to me. And so I was really excited about this opportunity with the museum to do this project. And the part of the landscape that has always really drawn me to Laguna has been Heisler Park and the cliffs, and actually the geology of this area. And my work, Pyramidion, the name actually comes from ancient Egyptian pyramids. The very top of an ancient Egyptian pyramid is called a pyramidion, and also same with obelisks. And it represented the rays of the sun and also the primordial mound, which the ancient Egyptians believed everything began from. And in ancient times, they were created out of granite that sometimes was coated with gold leaf or electrum. So they would reflect, and they could be seen from all these different, distances far away. And so in my work, even before this project, I had been connecting kind of the shape of the pyramid with geologic energy, volcanoes, and this kind of upwards movement that really formed this area. So I was really interested in kind of researching about how Laguna was formed, the rock formations, and there was actually volcanoes here millions of years ago that contributed to a lot of the rock formations that were here on the beach, and there's many different varieties of rock in the landscape. So I really wanted the works to interact with that landscape and also represent kind of the tectonic shifts in our land in Southern California, this sense of kind of being on the edge of the continent, kind of it's an ever-shifting nature really here. So, and the reflective qualities of the pyramids. You know, I wanted the viewers to interact with them as kind of seeing, you know, themselves in the landscape, and then also appreciating kind of this ever-shifting nature. And for the project, there were 7 pyramids total. So viewers received a map, and they would be able to find each of the pyramids in the landscape, which is something that I was really interested in. That's part of my artistic process, is actually going on these hikes out into the landscape, being inspired by, you know, what I'm seeing out there. So I really wanted to take the viewer kind of on a journey through Laguna, through kind of viewing these pyramids in different locations throughout the beach and these different areas. And the final pyramid being inside of the museum. This one is surrounded by lava rocks, which again kind of talks about the very ancient geologic origin of this area. And what was really interesting is, I think, you know, with the process of having the several sites where the sculptures were placed, you know, people, it really did bring them out into the landscape. And kind of what ended up being a very important part of the project was documentation, because we would actually put them out each day. They were only on view during museum hours. So it was kind of this, you know, temporary, you know, experience that, you know, became very kind of special because it was only there, you know, during the day. And something else that I really thought about a lot was, I love land art and, you know, interactions with art in the landscape, but to leave no trace was like really important to me. So it was this act of kind of placing the sculptures within the landscape, and then again, kind of like just having the impact of a hiker on the trail. So
To that.
yeah, so these are actually images from, I did an artist residency the year before at Boxo Projects in Joshua Tree. And that was the first time I ever brought pyramids out into the landscape. In fact, this one is actually at Amboy Crater, which is a volcano that erupted in the Mojave about 10,000 years ago. And, you know, this, you know, Pyramidion really kind of built on this idea out in Joshua Tree. I was, you know, hiking with these small pyramids, you know, placing them out in the landscape. And it was really the first time that kind of, you know, I had been painting pyramids within cracks in the earth, and it was very much part of my painting process in the studio. And this was the first time I kind of realized it in 3 dimensions. So it was really exciting. And yeah, this was kind of, you know, right before Pyramidion and really led up to this project.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And so, Rebecca, we have a great honor of being able to see your work in the next gallery, and the show will close in about a week's time. So I do hope that everybody will take the opportunity, if you haven't been able to see her work, to do so tonight and over the next week, because it's really a tremendous piece. So, Rebecca, some images of your work, and also in real life next door.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see, where to begin? I'm thinking about when I was asked to, I was commissioned to do this work by the museum. The first thing that I thought was, I want to express the many, many voices that the ocean brings, right? The ocean, that it is this alive, beautiful being that we barely understand its edges, but that going in is something that I know that as a diver I could actually bring to the audience. I grew up sometimes camping in the Yucatan. My father loved archaeology, One of the moments that I experienced that it showed me a world that I had never seen before was when I was diving at 80 feet and then I went out to where it was 300 feet. Blueness, emptiness, no sense of shapes or anything around it. And I remember just feeling alive, and more than anything, I felt dissolving and becoming the water, becoming the sea. So that was when I, first came here, I thought that's what I want to express. And then the first thing that came up from my research were the articles by Rosanna Shia of the DDT dumping right in front of the ocean. So it really kind of just shifted completely this kind of the expression of the magnificence. It didn't go away, but I needed to bring in another completely equally important character to the story. So I spent my next, I would say 6 months just working to connect with all the scientists. My first thing was to connect with Rosanna Shia. She became an amazing advisor, and therefore here are her articles, because they are, really I'm indebted to her. And I began going to the different Zoom meetings that she was having with all the scientists. Always my work has been research-based, art-science connection, art and science. So immediately I called the microbiologist, and I called David Valentine, who was the first one that went down with an ROV vessel. He was so excited that I would be interested in this that he gave me access to his footage that you see in the artwork. So those that getting to understand our relationship to the fact that the sea is alive and now it carries this dichloroethynyl trichloroethanol, right? It's just insane that it is bioaccumulating in all the beings from the tiniest deep sea creatures all the way to humans, because we eat the fish that already have been living there. So that kind of connection became very important. But here's the one quote from Rachel Carson that sealed it to me in terms of what I wanted to speak about in our interconnectedness. Fish, amphibian, and reptiles, warm-blooded bird and mammal, I tried to read, each one of us carries in our vein a salty stream in which the elements, sodium, potassium, and calcium, are combined in almost the same proportion as in seawater. What she was telling us is that we are the sea. So then, in that expressing the multiple voices of the sea, I needed to engage, I needed to kind of like enter into relation to, and relation meaning interspecies friendship with creatures that would actually help me have empathy for others, the more than human. We barely have empathy for ourselves. So how can we then extend our umwelt, right? Our available understanding of our world to others? Pavlov said the deepest sorrow of the world is that no one enters the subjective of another. Now try to engage to be able to have empathy and to love the abalone as much as you love your little sister. So that to me in the end is the only way that we are able to actually move into stop using the ocean as resource, but use it as source. So what I do then is that in the artwork, I take you through an arc in which not only I engage with indigenous more than human creatures, but also I connected with the indigenous cultures of the region, the Ahashaman and the Tongva, because these barrels are right in between us, and they definitely work with the sea, and they related to the sea as source, and they related to the sea. The sea was critical in their stories, their creation stories. So, in a sense, I end up having a character that takes us, the free diver, takes us into the magnificence of the ocean, explores like the scientific processes of curiosity. She goes around the barrels and around the barrels to get to see what is it. Then she feels like this rage and starts engaging with them and dares to touch them. And at the end, it's like she knows she cannot actually reject the reality of our troubled world. So she must embrace them, staying with the trouble, engaging. When we see the troubled world, we know that we must act together to do something about it. And so that's when she embraces, and that's when the knowledge of indigeneity comes forth. From the giant deep sea mucus larvacean that we have so much to learn from, that creature secretes it's no larger than my fist, but it secretes a 6 feet, it's like 3 feet mucus kind of bubble and purifies CO2 of the ocean. When it is too polluted, lets go and goes down. That is the kind of knowledge we need to acquire to remember our own humanity. The abalone has its own story, of course, in the indigenous cultures for time immemorial. And I created this being, a transformational being through the abalone shell. When we as humans look into the abalone, we might be able to see ourselves almost like a mirror, and then transform to be able to engage and feel that empathy to all of us and all creatures, so we can perhaps survive as a species.
So thank you so much, each of you, for the incredible overview and introduction and depth to the work. I think the work is so different and yet so united by response to place, but also to pressing issues. And so I think I'd like to start there, that we live in California. This is an incredible yet fragile place to be, always, but particularly now. So, Rebeca, you've just so very eloquently talked about one type of issue that you've responded to, but how over time, each of you, have you thought about not only the reflection of what's around us, but also response and responsibility to putting art into nature and into landscape? So, Phil, you're to my side, so maybe I'll just start with you, because also you're trained as an architect. So as an architect, you, I know, have thought about this in other ways as well.
Yeah, sure. I think, for me, the choice to use the environment, I'll say, as material through reflection, I think is more, about seeing. And, as I, talk about the desert and the beauty that exists there, certainly here on the beach, there's this incredible beauty that is in front of you every single day. Sometimes it kind of becomes part of your habit, and you kind of see it. It becomes sort of part of your world. But I often say, the only thing required for you to experience that beauty every day is to stop and to look, and that's it. And so you sort of need to put down the phone and step out of your daily grind to appreciate the beauty that's there. I mean, for me, in the studio, I can be, 5 minutes away. I'm back in a canyon, and there's nothing that's man-made there. And there's a sense of being reconnected back to what is important, and connecting back to the earth itself, and sort of realigning your priorities and how you connect to the place. So I feel like the environment that we're lucky to live in, which is certainly Southern California, kind of breeds this desire to be part of the place and to be in awe of it daily.
Lita?
Yeah.
We're very aware of where
where we are, and tragedy around you also as a result of environment.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to talk about is following what Rebecca was saying and hearing what everybody is, how we all respond, is we're in this really beautiful moment where for the first time it seems that we're becoming aware, like you said, of every single being, every single has a life and an expression. And I like to talk about this cultural historian. His name is Thomas Berry, and he talks about how we're at the end of the story, a 2,000-year story, and that we need to create a new story, and that new story is of us in the cosmos. And then, and of course I'm jumping up and down, we've all been doing this as artists. But then he talks about 3 universal laws. The first one is about our multi-diversity, how each one of us is unique. The second one is the one that really has totally inspired me, is that everything in the universe, everything from a human being to a rock, to a chair, to a galaxy, to light, to air, to wind, to anything you can think of, has an interiority and a subjectivity that is continually expressing itself. And then he talked about the third one is that through that interiority and subjectivity, through that multi-diversity, we're all connected. But what I want to express, and what Rebecca expressed so well, is that we're at that moment where we're seeing how air is talking to us. I'll never forget, during the pandemic, I happened to have moved to this place where I could hear what light was saying. It was like we're beginning to be sensitive, as you were talking about, to everything around us. Laddie with light, you with these geological events, of course the sea, light again, and the air. And if we could, and it is about stopping. My piece, an elongated now, was the idea of stopping and being able to see our relationship to the sun. And so that is the moment we're in, and I'm seeing it in all kinds of disciplines that we're beginning to understand that. There's all kinds of films now about interspecies sensitivity, the trees, and we're becoming sensitive, everything, and it is so beautiful and so magical. And so it's just wonderful that we're all part of this, all of us.
Thank you so much.
Kelly, Laddie, comments?
Yeah, I really see that as like a commonality throughout all of our work. It's like that moment of stopping and truly appreciating and connecting with nature. And that's something that's the most important thing for me in my work, is to inspire like a deep spiritual connection with nature. Because I feel like, if you can inspire people's connections with nature, they're going to want to save it and work towards, conservation and all of these things that we need to be thinking about right now with so much going on in the world. And I just feel like getting people out really face to face with nature, and I think artwork can be kind of that in between, like it's like a medium between nature and humans. It can really connect us back to nature. So I think that's what gives me hope, and I'm actually optimistic where I think that we can form these connections with nature that will help us in the future. Go for it.
Nature sucks. I think that I can only go back to the project here, where it seemed like politics was our biggest challenge. Actually, there was we all know Orange County is a right-wing bastion of politicism. But in order to do this piece where I ventured out into the ocean with it, we had to go through an incredible amount of red tape. was this people were fighting us not to do it. It's kind of ruin the beach. You're gonna, we never touched the beach. So I think humans are going to have to come around to that and understand that. Our small contribution to light and art and the natural progression of things and how we're changing constantly. I'm almost 80 years old, and I actually feel it really fast. I see the seasons going every 2 weeks, that kind of thing. But I think that people are just going to have to come around and just make things a little bit easier for environmentalists and people that want to interact with the environment.
The fight between art and politics or art and bureaucracy is enormous. It made me think, I realized that when I did the project, nobody said I could do the beach. It was all these parks.
Beach was a problem.
And I chose the beach and they said, oh my God, we have to have this permission, that permission. And I had the same thing, and I didn't even have an object. I go, well, you didn't have an object either. But it's like...
I didn't even touch
You didn't even touch the beach. I had lots of people on the beach. But that is a real fight. The fight of how to put out these kinds of ideas that are here to transform us, right? And we have this grid, not of light, but of bureaucracy, that stops us, or that makes it so complicated. And that is something that we as artists fight all the time. And at times we win, which is great, but with great...
Yeah, a lot of times we get, at
Yeah.
least I did. What do you want to do a harebrained idea like that?
No, it's always been that kind of fight.
Rebecca,
Yes,
probably
I
have
was
something to
on this
contribute.
well, and yes, I'm not even going to go into the whole thing of politics because I was told that my project, whoever is in charge of this art world in Laguna Beach said that they will do everything in their power to have my project not be in their beach. That's why we ended up indoors. But it was really that level of blocking, but I'm not going to go into that. That's not important. When I'm thinking of, when I was doing the piece, I knew that I wanted to be able to have a moment of transformation of this confrontation with this defiled, horrendous, DDT poisoning 500,000 barrels down there that we have no solution to it. Dr. Terrell pretty much clearly said, there's no solution to this. We need to first understand the magnitude of the problem, the chemical and biological processes that are happening down there and how they affect all life. It's going to take us a decade, right? So we know that we can't do that. It's a monument to our negligence. So anyway, so I knew that I needed to move from there to where do we go as a humanity? And that's when for me the indigenous cultures is to me the answer. I am looking for my own humanity through listening to indigenous cultures, whether they are Lakotan, Aztecan, Ahashiman, Tongva, invertebrate, avian, or lupin, right? So that is something that they all have been here for time immemorial. And we are so young in this. What is it that we are in a toilet paper roll of 400 sheets? The light millimeter is our existence as humans in this world. And we come in and we don't even, and we have the arrogance to not even listen to what the Dipsiniucus larvacean is telling us. So for me, that idea from the Ahashiman elder, Adelia Sandoval, who is the voice you hear, and she is the elder that is underwater. Reciprocity, responsibility, and respect. No hope. Screw hope. We don't need, for me, I didn't want to come up, and finish the piece, let's be hopeful. No, that is like zero in our brains. We don't even know what to do with that information. But we do know how to be responsible, enter into reciprocal relationship with each other and with the planet, to be grateful and to be respectful for all life in the planet. So that to me was a way of being able to, okay, I can handle this. I can really go into a place that I can do the cycle of the piece, but it's reciprocity, respect, and responsibility.
Thank you so much. I imagine there may be
Some questions from people in the audience, so we want to give an opportunity for a few questions, and there will be also ample opportunity to engage with everybody after. Are there some questions for these artists? Yes.
Thank you so much, all of you. I've known Lita, and probably Laddie doesn't remember me at UCI, in other words. But I am so grateful for all of your what you've offered. It's a great concern. Every one of you has done something very important, which is the consequences of your work, that it doesn't leave a trace. That's extremely important. And there's ethics and consequences about everything. And I think it's even the most important thing is the way we are training generations. And the word training is a very dangerous word because it enters into the highest realm of our educational systems. Working with the university for many years at UC Irvine and between the medical school and the art department, there is no difference. There is a great fear, and control seems to be the issue. And listening to you and knowing works like Annie Goldsworthy, where you don't touch the environment, you illuminate it, but you go away from it and you take nothing except you give hope, if you will, but hope isn't enough. You talk about, one of the things that really hit me was talk about these stopgaps that have happened where you were constrained by all kinds of bureaucracy, or politics, whatever it is you want to call it. That is out of fear. And the same people who talk like that about what you shouldn't do are the same people who are inspiring the opposite in terms of complete degradation of the environment and building out. And those hoops that people go through, they apply the same types of, quote, stopgaps. So you're subjected to that in trying to illuminate the importance of the environment. And, we really need to, as citizens, and to do what we can to make sure that our voices are represented all the way through our communities and into the educational system. And so once again, I want to thank you because it's so important, and I hope, and I don't know if this is going to be able to be put on Zoom or some type of thing where the public can actually see it, but it is profound what you've done, and I want to thank the people from the museum, our director here, for having the courage to continue this. I think it's really beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lita, sorry, so sorry.
I just wanted to say, it's the museums that make this possible, and it's their responsibility because they're an entity in the city. We're artists, we're transient artists, but we need the museums to do this, because they're they can deal with the bureaucracy and really make the way. I mean, that was my experience here. They were against it, you know, especially building and land management. Or what is it called? Bureau of Land Management. They didn't want any.
The coastal
They didn't want
commission.
anything
Yeah.
to do anything to the beach. But it brought a lot of people down and made them aware of it. You know?
I mean, I'll just say, I think the kind of, I love the process, and I'm fascinated by it. Like, I love stepping into the room where no one wants the project to happen. And, you know, because everybody ultimately has their box to check. They're looking for, they have this concern, the next person has this concern. And I always see it as just, it's a whole series of questions that need a proper answer. And it actually can be that simple. It just takes a whole lot of time. But I completely agree, Laddie. I mean, my project would not have happened if it weren't for the museum. It was 10 months of process for 3 days of a show. And, you know, and even during that time, you know, we met with so many people. We'd come down and see the site, you know, in the summertime, and there would be like half the sand was gone. And the conversation we're having now, we're trying to anticipate where the sand will be in November, and you know, where the tide is and how that shifts and changes. But what happened is that ultimately, when you start telling people about, you know, how beautiful this will be and how you're trying to use the place that they live in, there's a sense of ownership that inevitably comes about. At least for me, that's the goal. So that there's a sense that it's not me creating work, it's all of us working together. And those are always the best projects. But it is really crucial for myself and for the museum to kind of make sure that the intent and the hope for the project is, you know, on point and doesn't degrade through that process, but is actually enhanced by it.
Thank you. I think there's a question here.
One of the things everybody is talking about the politicians and the hurdles. Well, that's going to happen, and the politicians have their own agenda. But I think, as Rebeca eloquently expressed, the value of art is how to understand the world around us and science. And you used Rachel Carson. I had a good friend of mine, an artist up in the Pasadena area, named Gerard Zorfian. I don't know if anybody heard of him, but he was fairly popular at the time. And he had a long-term friendship with a physicist named Richard Feynman. And it was so strong that on weekends for like 8 years, Feynman would try to teach Jerry about physics, and Jerry would teach Feynman how to draw. And Feynman expressed that he wanted to learn about art because he wanted to look at the world through an artist's eye and to incorporate this. And they had a friendship, and some of the people were Jerry would say, you want to analyze everything to the minute detail. And Feynman would say, the detail is beauty. If you look at it, look at anything, the more you look at it. And he wrote something, the imagination of nature is far, far greater than the imagination of man. The same thrill, the same awe and mystery come again and again when we look at a problem deeply enough. With more knowledge comes deeper, more wonderful, deeper and more wonderfully learning went on to penetrate deeper still. Never concerned if the answer may prove disappointing, but with pleasure and confidence, we turn over each new stone to unimagined strengths leading on to wonderful questions and mysteries. And in Zorthian's funeral, I spoke, and there was one of the last things that I said that I had recently read a book on the Tropic of Cancer. And the appropriate section to me, as it could be found on the first page or the first chapter. It was there that Henry Miller wrote, "It is now the fall of my second year in Paris. I was sent here for a reason that I have not yet been able to fathom. I have no money, no resources, no hopes. I am the luckiest man alive." A year ago, 6 months ago, I thought that I was an artist. I no longer think about it. I am. All that was literature has fallen from me. There are no more books to be written. Thank God.
Thank you so much.
I just want to say one thing about the museum and the importance of the project, Nature and Art, Art and Nature. I just came back from New York like this afternoon, and the art world there is incredibly exciting. And yet, hearing everyone here, I realize how much Southern California, we are connected to the environment in a way. It's specific to here, and how important it is that we have these kinds of programs. And there's, this is the place where artists speak about this. And so I want to commend the museum for doing such a project.
Well, thank you for saying that, Lita, and I think that's where this all started, was about this place. And, you know, this is where the conversation began, and this is really, I think, the inspiration for Art and Nature, and frankly, for the Laguna Art Museum, which is this place has drawn people, but particularly artists, for more than a century. So the idea of not just the beauty, which we all can see, and we all ran outside to look at the sunset today from the building, and you know, I tend to do that whenever I'm here, and I think we all marvel at that, but it's beyond the beauty. It's really, you know, as Rebecca, you talk about a type of responsibility and a type of respect, and a real awareness of place, and I think that you all have done that in your work, but also this museum has inspired that in its location, but also in its philosophy. So I think your point is very important.
Thank you.
There's a question over here. So
No, we're not asking questions for meetings.
Comments? Yeah. We welcome you to the panel.
I've been explaining about the Art and Nature Committee from its inception, and I'd like to give a big shout out to Malcolm Warner, because this is his legacy project. This is what he's left behind, and it is a magnificent program that I hope will go on for many years to come.
Nice.
Thank you for saying that. And I think, you know, it's a real testimony to a commitment to the public, because it's a way for the public to get involved, not only in the museum, but you know, in the whole kind of situation here, and then hopefully come into the museum. So, you know, there's something about engaging and embracing the public as an audience that each artist has done here. So thank you for that, for sure. Is there any other question or comment? And if not, oh, there's one more hand here.
No questions, but just one special thank you to the museum. Thank you for each one of you for touching my heart and soul, and I think you touched a lot of people tonight. But I want to address Lita and telling you that your particles exhibit here. My granddaughter, who I had been painting with from the time she was 15 months old, she was 7 when I had been there, and I experienced it, and I said, she has to experience it, and I took her, and we sat there. She was a little nervous, a little scared, wasn't quite sure, it was a little uncomfortable for her, but I thought that's okay, she can experience it. She's now 16 and a very dedicated artist, and is just absolutely loves installation and contemporary art, and I love it, and I think many times of sitting there with her through that experience. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody so much for making the journey here to Laguna tonight, and all of you, and particularly the artists who came. So thank you so much for being a part of this. Opportunity to see Rebecca's work, to see Kelly's pyramid here. and to meet and talk to these artists. So have a nice evening.